Hello, I'm Annie Davey. I've been telling Bible stories to children for many years, and I've got some lovely ones to tell you from the New Testament in this section here. If you want to know about the background, where I got some of the background detail from, you can look it up on the web on truthortradition.com or www.korky.info, where we've written a book called Jesus, Faith and Fact. So it's all in there somewhere, but there's some interesting things here which you may not know. You may think you do know the stories, but wait and see. So let's see what we've got. Hello. Do you remember the story of the wise man and the foolish man who built their house on a rock or the sand, and the sand one fell down when the storm came? Well, this story happened just after Jesus got home at Capernaum, after telling that story. And it was quite exciting, really, because some Jewish men came running up to him and said, "Oh, please, sir, please, can you help us, please?" And they said, there's one of these chaps needs some help. Who do you think that might be? Does he remind you of somebody? Have you learnt about the Romans in your history stories? He's a centurion, and that means he's in charge of 100 soldiers, and he's quite an important man. But he wasn't a Jewish man, but he's had a servant. He was in bed, very sick, and he was very worried about him. You see him lying on his bed there. And in those days, servants weren't treated very well, but this man, although he was a Roman, and they weren't renowned for being very good to people, he loved this young man, and he was really anxious. He didn't want him to die. And I've got power, I've got great power, and I can do all kinds of things, but I don't know anybody who's got power over illness. Like, oh, what about Jesus? So he asked some Jewish elders, older people, if they would ask Jesus to come or to heal his servant. And so the men came to Jesus and they said, "Please, could you help the centurion about his servant? Now, this man is a good man. He loves our people, and he's even built our synagogue for us. He's a really kind man, and it would be wonderful to help him." And so Jesus said, "Well, that's amazing. I'll come." And then, as they were on their way, a messenger came to meet them from the centurion. He said, please don't bother to come to my house. I wouldn't dream of troubling you to do that. I'm just not good enough. I feel really unworthy." And for all he was this word here, he felt that he wasn't good enough to have Jesus under his roof, because he knew that Jesus was such a very special person. He said, "I'm a soldier. I'm in charge of 100 men. If I say to one of them, 'Come here,' he comes. If I say to somebody else, 'You go there,' he goes." He said, "I just have to say the word. And I know that if you say the word, my servant will be healed." And Jesus said that the one thing he'd not met in the whole of Israel was faith like that. He said, faith is astonishing. Faith's a funny word, isn't it? I wonder what it means. It actually means this word here. You read that together? It means trust. You trust your friends, don't you? Sometimes they let you down, but faith is trust. If you sit on a chair, you have faith that it will stay put and it won't fall down. But faith in Jesus is something special. If you trust him, you know that he can do very special things. So the messengers said no need to come, and Jesus was really impressed with that. And so they went home. So the unworthy man had such faith and trust in Jesus that he was made better. Because Jesus had, let's have a look what he had. he had the power to make the man well. And when the men got back to the centurion's house, there was the servant, large as life and twice as natural, completely well again. So they must have been very excited. They must have told Jesus and told everybody what had happened, that the centurion's servant was completely better again. So the centurion had great faith in Jesus, and he knew that he had the power to heal him, and that he was really great. And it reminded me of a time when my mum had to have cataracts removed from her eyes. She was very elderly, and they did the operation, and it didn't go as well as they'd hoped. So one of her eyes lost sight in that eye, which was a shame. And I went to see her a few weeks later and said to her, "Mummy, your eye doesn't look very good to me. It looks a bit sore. Do you think you ought to go back and see the optician again?" So she did. He did the test, where they cover up your eye and get you to read the letters. And then he said, "Well, there's no point in covering up the other eye, I know, because there's no sight in that eye, but we'll try anyway." And to his astonishment, she could actually read down to the same level as the other eye, as the good eye. And he said, "Let me have a look at this." So he got his light and he shone it into her eye. And he said, "This is rather extraordinary. Have you had a blow on the head, or have you changed your diet or something? Because it seems to me that eye is as good as the other eye now." So my mother said, "No, I don't think so." "Oh," she said, "I know what. They've started a healing service at church. And so I've been going along to the healing service and being prayed for every week." "Well, my dear," said the optician, "I think you're in receipt of a miracle. I've never seen anything like it. It's wonderful." So from that time on, my mum had the sight of both eyes. And it was just thrilling. And it reminded me of this story, that if we ask, we will receive, and wonderful things can happen. They don't always happen straight away, and sometimes we have to wait. But it was wonderful for my mum, as you can imagine. So perhaps you can think of somebody that you know who needs some help, or who needs to be made better. We could always pray, couldn't we? Let's do that. Lord, I'm thinking of somebody now that I know who needs to be made better. They've had an illness for a long time. I know somebody's had an illness for a short time. And all we know, Lord, is that if you say the word, they will be made well. So please, Lord, will you hear our plea for mercy and make them well again? And we ask this in your name. Amen. So thank you for listening, and God bless you.